Talk podcast. What's up? Chef Sucio here, chilling, studio, Oakland. What up? Representing out here, the dining scene in the Bay Area, as well as the world. But we'll start with the Bay Area first. Reissuing episodes. All right. There's a motorcycle outside. I'm not sure if you can hear that. I can. But I digress. We got Jason Mckinney. Jason Mckinney. That's episode 4. Episodio 4 de Sucio Talk. Okay. Let me read the caption that I wrote for Jason. I dropped this episode on December 11th, 2020. December 11th, 2020. 4th episode. I had no idea what I was doing. I still don't have any idea what I'm doing. But we'll figure it out. All right, here I go. Jason Mckinney. He's known on Instagram as Captain Loveboat. He's the CEO and founder of Truffle SF. I met this man through Tyler Vorse when Jason started working at the French Laundry all of those years ago. The hustler in his spirit is a wise one who looks to inspire and change the culinary landscape for working chefs all over the world. Truffle Shuffle. From truly humble beginnings to working his ass off to become a great chef to owning his own successful business that's not even a pandemic could keep down. If anything, pandemic made it better. All right. Ladies and gentlemen, episode 4 of Sucio Talk presents one of the truest people I've come to know, Jason Mckinney. That was back when it was on Spreaker. No longer on Spreaker. I'm on Anchor now. It's a video podcast. It's what we do. It's all good. You as listeners, you're out there. You know when it sounds shitty. I've actually had somebody recently meet in person, but like, your podcast is great, but sometimes it sounds like shit. So let me try to make sure that doesn't happen. And sometimes it sounds great. You produce it, put it on YouTube. When you put it on YouTube, it sounds like shit. I recently got hit up to be a possible host on a TV program, and during the process, I gave him all of what I thought was my best work. He said, none of this is good. All of this is garbage. So I had to go back to the drawing board, make it happen. You know, do I know if I got the show? No, but we'll figure it out. Even if it's not a step towards the right direction, it's still a step. You know, which is better than taking a step backwards or taking no steps at all, right? So super excited to be able to bring to you Jason Mckinney. No longer going to be a chef. He's a CEO now, kicking it. Almost said killing ass. He's not killing ass. Partied with him this past weekend. Cool-ass dude. Become kind of like a business mentor to me. He's a guy who he'll learn something and then he will let you know what he knows. It's not one of those guys that knows and then doesn't share the information. Okay. Other than that, chilling this week, going to the Fluff Party in San Francisco. It's like basically a club with video on the wall. It's like a all immersive, kind of like that Van Gogh. I think they put on that Van Gogh exhibit where it's immersive, right? So they got the art all over the walls and you're in it, kind of like one of those little light boxes that you buy that make you look like you're in space, but you're in your room, which, you know, wouldn't be a bad idea for those mushroom dinners I want to host, right? With that, I leave you. I'll see you next week. I have on some pretty cool shows. I got Hungry Hooker. I saw her at the Slug Bar party, so I'm going to get her to be on the show, as well as talking to Navy Venegas up there at Barn Diva. I'm going to get her to do the podcast. I also want to start panels up. I want to be doing panels fucking every day if I can, you know. So if you guys are out there doing dinners, chefing it about, come up to the studio. We'll talk shit for after service editions of Sucio Talks. And we'll go from there. With that, I leave you. Thank you very much.
Hello and welcome to Sucio Talk. I'd like to take this moment to thank all of you for your continued support. If you'd like to reach out to me, you can visit my Facebook page. It's Sucio_Talk. You can find that under my name, David Gijoti. For all of you who aren't my Facebook friend, come join me. I'm also happy to field any questions anybody has about previous episodes or people that you'd like to see on the show. Let me know. You can follow the link to email me at my Facebook page, or you can write into suciotalk@gmail.com. suciotalk@gmail.com. No underscore there. You can also DM me at David_Sucio. That's my Instagram name. I want this podcast to be of the community. I want to include you guys as much as I can, you chefs out there. So for this first round, I'd like to hear about crazy workplace stories, whether that has to do with service, cooking, or anything food related in general, or any cool stories regardless of what they have to do with. I'll do my best to field all the emails and kind of do a little story per episode. Don't also be afraid to tell your friends about this podcast, to raise awareness about it. I'm trying to blow this up so it's on a global market, but we'll see. I just started last month. This podcast is available on Google Podcasts, Spotify, and Spreaker as of now. I'm working on dropping it on iTunes as well. And just letting you know a little bit about what's coming up. We have our next guest, which will be episode 5. Will be Mia Khalifa and Robert Sandberg. Chef Robert Sandberg worked at Noma, also worked at Franson when they won 3 stars. He's now working on his own project. Mia Khalifa is an amazing person, cool friend to be able to go and interview and see what she's been up to. She leads an interesting life, so I think you guys will be interested in what she has to say. Past that, the next episode after Mia and Robert is Chef Costow. Super happy to be able to sit down with my mentor and pick his brain a little bit about his younger years forming himself as a chef. All right, so this is David Sucio signing off, and please enjoy this next episode. This is Jason Mckinney, episode 4, Sucio Talk.
Bienvenidos, welcome to Sucio Talk. I'm sitting here with my boy Jason Mckinney. We gotta let the music stop a little bit before I start talking. But hey, how are you, Jason? Nice to see you. Cheers.
Cheers, David.
Hell yeah. We're drinking Modelo's at the first incarnation of the Truffle Shuffle headquarters.
Yeah.
Am I right? Yeah.
The second, actually.
Yeah. A lot of employees have lived here.
Mm-hmm.
Tyler lived here.
Yep.
I've lived here.
Mm-hmm.
That's a lie. But, I've stayed here a lot of times. So let me introduce Jason. He is a great chef and a great mentor to many now that he is co-founder and CEO, am I right, of Truffle Shuffle. You guys know a little bit about Truffle Shuffle because I talked to Tyler last time I was here. And they are, as of now, the unofficial sponsor of Sucio Talk. All right, so truffleshuffle.com. Check it out. So, Jason Mckinney, how are you?
Excellent. And you can make us the official sponsor.
All right, there you go. You hear it first. The official sponsor, Truffle Shuffle. All right, so, here at Sucio Talk, I like to take it all the way back.
Mm-hmm.
I know what you've been doing this year, and we'll get to that later. But before that, sir, where were you born?
Originally born in Orlando, Florida.
Orlando, Florida. Florida?
Yeah.
Damn. All right. And mom and dad, who are they? What do they do?
My parents met back there. My dad has always kind of been a hustler.
Okay.
An entrepreneur himself.
Very cool.
My dad at the time had a car lot, and then he was bought a couple houses. He was renting out houses and met my mom. My mom needed a room to rent, and he was paying like $500 a month on this house, but rented it to my mom for like $300.
That's sick.
And then that's how they met. And so now my mom is a dog groomer, and then my dad is going for it.
There you go, man. Hell yeah. Mom and dad. Shout out to mom and dad. Very cool. So then you grew up there in Florida. Did you move at any point, or did you kind of stay there your whole school career?
Yeah, all the way up until about 18. It was always back and forth between Florida and Georgia.
Okay. Where in Georgia?
Right outside Atlanta.
Okay. And then what was all that about? Just jobs, or just wanting to move there because you had family?
Yeah, so my dad just kept growing his business. So he started his first car lot in Orlando, McKinney Motors.
Okay.
I got a picture I'll show you with, he's got the mustache and
that's awesome.
Has all the old, like the Chevy vans and the Impalas on his lot.
Yeah. What year was this? What year are we talking?
I mean, the picture looks like it's in the 70s or 80s. So, I think he's like 56, and he started his first car lot when he was 18. It's 2020, so whatever that math is.
Damn, that makes me feel like shit. 18, he had his own car lot.
Yeah, he never worked for anybody else.
I was playing Grand Theft Auto.
Pretty much.
Damn. All right.
Well, and so, he went up to Georgia, opened up some car lots up there, and then his goal was to retire before 45, and he did that. And then we moved to the Keys, where he, invested in real estate down there.
Very cool. And then the Keys, what was that like?
The Keys was cool, It's a very beautiful place.
Yeah.
Very small place. It's a lot like when I hear Tyler talk about Maine,
Yeah.
Very similar, but like the exact opposite.
Right.
Whereas, growing up in the Keys, it's a small community. There's like 400 or 500 kids that go to the high school. And then everyone kind of does the same activities. Mm-hmm. Everyone either go out boating. The Keys is really cool. It's 100 miles long, right? And then there's about 90 different islands. And so it's just one long strip.
Okay.
And it's so long, but across doesn't go more than a mile wide.
Wow.
So you can, kind of ride your bike from one side to the other. And on one side you have the ocean, the other side you have the Gulf.
Whoa.
So, every day you can go out wake skating, wakeboarding, fishing.
Damn. Now, how long did you stay there?
For about 2 years. And then, moved down there, or actually about 5 years. So middle school up until second year of high school. And then
moved back to Florida?
Moved back up to Georgia.
Okay, very cool. And then you're in high school. What were your interests then? Were you cooking then? What were you doing?
In high school, I was basically always in trouble.
Okay, I can see that.
Yeah. Before I turned 17, I had 2 felonies.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay. Do you want to name those felonies?
I've really never told anyone these, but I figured we'd go for it with this podcast.
Let's do it, man. This is Sucio Talk. Say what you feel, baby.
And so, as a kid, my dad was always working, and honestly, we kind of just took care of ourselves,
Yeah, for sure.
And so, the first time I really got into trouble was for grand theft of a firearm.
Okay.
And then the second time was for a DUI.
A DUI. Okay, got you. Well, the second one's pretty normal. I think everyone gets a DUI at least some point.
Yeah, it was.
It's like a common thing, especially in Napa, man. They're just looking for you. You go get a morning coffee, you get a DUI. It's crazy. So I mean, you're in the system, right, for a little bit, and like, what made you not want to do that anymore?
Everything for us came down to 2008.
Okay.
And so, like I said, my dad was growing his business, and he always kind of had a drug problem.
Yeah.
And so, growing his business, always had kind of a problem with just anything that would help him go faster.
Yeah, I hear you.
Very hard worker, really brilliant guy, but just always thought he needs to be going faster. Mm-hmm. And when you always are trying to go faster, inevitably, the way life works, it will make you slow down.
Yeah, for sure.
And so when 2008 hit, he was just a little too far ahead of himself and lost his entire business.
Okay.
So at the time, he had, about 100 employees, was just too far out ahead, couldn't make rent, couldn't make payroll.
Mm-hmm.
And, I watched my dad lay every single person off that he ever worked with, and then just kind of unbelievably spiraled out of control.
Yeah.
And so as a very young kid, I watched my dad go from, being this, kind of heroic figure in my life to, in like 3 months, he totaled 3 cars.
Yeah.
He would stay up for 5-6 days at a time, doing meth, staying up, trying to figure out how to like save the business.
Yeah.
And then go drive a car somewhere, total it. And so as a young kid, I put together $3,000 to have an intervention for him. And he wouldn't go get help, so we completely broke off anything that had to do with my dad.
Mm-hmm. And that was you, your mom?
Yeah, and then I got 2 sisters and a brother.
Okay. So you all decided we got to go.
It's like, if you won't get help, all we want from you is your love. We don't need your money. We don't need anything,
Yeah, for sure.
And so that took, our family, and we went from being, well off to dead broke.
Yeah. Now, where did you move from there?
So we were still in Georgia, and so, my dad had a couple car lots, so we moved closer to Atlanta, but still on the outside in Alpharetta.
Uh-huh.
And we're in one house, and essentially it was either, find a way to figure this out, or, kind of get totally fucked.
Yeah,
and so,
exactly.
At 16 years old, honestly, it was like overnight. I just cut out all the bullshit, got 2 jobs, started working 2 jobs, and just tried to figure out a way to make sure we could just pay bills at the house,
Yeah. What were those jobs?
I worked in the morning at a breakfast restaurant.
Uh-huh.
I worked on the griddle station.
Okay. What are you
And
making? Little English muffins?
It was like on the right side, I had the waffle station.
Yeah. Oh, love
And
the
then
waffle station.
I made all the pancakes, and then everything that came off the griddle, the potatoes, the toast.
Sick, man. Hell yeah. So, and then what's your other job?
And so I did that 4 a.m. to 4 p.m. And then at 5 p.m. I would go to like an alternative school.
Uh-huh.
And then I did alternative school from 5 to 8. And then on the weekend, I worked at another breakfast restaurant.
Okay. So 2 breakfast restaurants, getting breakfast under your belt as a young cook. Now, at this point, are you like, this is what I want to do? Or are you like, this is my job?
Before everything went down with my dad, I was unrealistic on like how the world worked, And so I wanted to be a music producer. I was like, yo, I'll be a music producer 3 days a week, and then a chef 2 days a week.
That's a hell of a part-time job.
I was dead serious. I looked into like both like the schooling and everything, and I was like, yeah, that'll be awesome.
Okay.
And then I got this. I applied to, it was like 175 positions before someone would finally take me.
Yeah.
I had long hair at the time, and got this one job, and I remember the first days at the restaurant was just unbelievably busy.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? That like level of like, like busyness or insanity where everybody doesn't know what's going on.
Yeah.
Like there's not one person that's like, all right, I'm going to take charge here.
Yeah.
And the first time I like saw that and felt it, I like just looked around and I was like, this is my home. This is awesome.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, no, everybody's looking at everybody else like, who's going to fix this? And it's like, well, I guess we'll wait till after service.
And
it's just like everybody for themselves.
100%. And just like the just that rush of excitement,
Yeah.
And then doing things, seeing a result. Making these pancakes, okay, these are nice. Making them slightly different, okay, these are dope.
Yeah. These are not good. Constantly like correcting yourself and being like, nah, So from a young age, I mean, you were super self-critical and ambitious. I mean, 2 jobs, and then you say, I'm going to be part-time music producer, part-time chef. I wasn't thinking about that shit. I'll tell you what. I was like, how could I not work? You know what I mean? But that's pretty cool, man. So you're in this stage in your life. You're cooking. You finally have that moment where you're like, this is it. At that point, do you move on to another restaurant, or do you kind of just stay where you're at and then bide your time before you move on?
Yeah, so honestly, it was a big turning point in my life. Because even, you don't make a lot of money at those places, and, as a family, we're in a bad position.
Yeah.
And so, one day we got an eviction notice on the door, and my mom had to, I had to move her into a smaller house, and there's only one house available at the time, and, it was just not a very nice place.
Yeah.
And we moved into that house, and, just to give you an idea, literally, my mom, my two sisters were all asleep on the couch together.
Yeah.
Because that was the only place that had a furnace, so they all would, my two, teenage sisters and my mom would sleep on the couch together in this house because there's no heat.
Mm-hmm.
And so when in that transition of her moving to there, I had been looking for, what is my next move? Mm-hmm. And I actually made a fake college resume.
Okay.
And applied to Disney for their college internship program.
Uh-huh.
And it was a program where you went, and so this is back to Orlando. And you would go, they would give you an apartment, a paycheck, and then you would be in some sort of sector that you would want to learn about. So it's a really great program. So you could do food and beverage or housekeeping or, marketing or whatnot. And so I got accepted to this thing, moved my mom into this smaller house, and then I came to her one day and I was like, honestly, Mom, I can't leave.
Yeah.
I was like, I'll stay here. I'll get another job. I'll figure out a way to make sure that we, I help you pay the bills. And she told me that you have to help yourself before you can help others.
Yeah.
And so I actually finished high school 8 months early.
Uh-huh.
I went from being legitimately probably the worst grades possible. In between those felonies, I got kicked out of 9 different high schools.
Jesus.
So if you could imagine, my GPA was a 0.2.
Yeah.
And then when I went to the alternative school, I could just work at my own pace. So I did 4 years with the high school in about 9 months, and then got to the end of it and got accepted to this college program at Disney, and I was like, all right. And then I went down to Disney, and all of a sudden I was 17 years old with my own apartment in Orlando, Florida.
Sick. How was that?
It was awesome.
I bet. Damn.
And
so tell me about this fake college resume, because this is pretty impressive here.
Yeah, so legitimately at the time, you had to be in college to get into this thing. And so I was not in college. But I needed a place to live, you know. So
what college did you fake go to?
So legitimately, I, as part of finishing up my high school, there's a college called BYU, Brigham Young University.
Uh-huh.
And they do a really good, remote learning program. They, you could be in high school and fail this class, and then they'll send you a packet. You do that packet, send it back to them, and then they send you the credit you need for that class.
Yeah.
And it's accepted by all schools. So I knew about this school, and so got a hold of someone's fucking college transcript.
Uh-huh.
And it was literally like a Kinko's job, went to Kinko's, copy and paste.
That is amazing.
Forged this thing, sent it to Disney, and then got to Disney. And Disney is one of the only employers in the world that has access to the FBI records.
Really?
So when I got there, they found out about my previous charges, which I never got charged, right? I got all the way up, to the thing, and we're able to get the charges dropped on both things.
Okay.
With the first incident, there's actually 200 individuals that wrote letters to the judges just being like, Jason made a mistake, please give him a second chance. And so I only spent about 3 months actually in juvie for that, which I could have been looking at 10 years.
Yeah, for sure.
And so they found out about that, and then I sent Disney all these letters and the kind of everything that happened, and it went through an approval process, and they approved me to work at Disney. And so then here I was, 17. I worked at their All-Star Music Hotel.
Okay.
Which, if you can imagine, they literally served 2,000 people an hour.
That is insane.
It was.
And what state were you in the kitchen?
So I thought I would be in the kitchen, right? Food and beverage internship. I was like, well, this is awesome,
Yeah.
And I remember showing up, talking to the chefs, just being so excited.
Yeah.
And I ended up being kind of it was like a food court, right?
Yeah.
And so guests would come in, and what it was Disney does all these, Disney owns ESPN, so they host all of the, band camp competitions, or the national cheerleader competitions.
Oh, what up, Ian? How you doing, man? We got Ian rolling in on the
We
podcast.
got Ian Rosenshock over here.
What up, Dave?
What up, man?
What up, Jay?
What
How
up,
you doing?
Ian?
Chilling. We're on the set, chilling out.
Doing good.
All right, here we go.
And so they would do all those competitions there, and you would need somewhere for every single high school that has a band to stay.
Yeah.
And that's what these places were. And so you would have these waves of band kids coming through, or cheerleaders coming through, or the football kids coming through. And if just like a food court, and they had their little Disney section. So this was the bakery, this was the grill, this was the sandwiches or whatever.
Yeah.
And then behind that was the actual kitchen, where these guys weren't really cooking, they were just heating up all the pizzas came in frozen, and then all the soup was in bags and things like that. So they would just kind of feed the line, and then I would stand there and put French fries in platters, or people would come up and point out I want that, and I would put it together on a tray and hand it to them. The most cooking I did was we would put sandwiches through a press. And so I was supposed to be there for 9 months. After 4 months, I so desperately, truly wanted to learn how to cook.
Yeah.
I ended up finding a culinary apprenticeship program in Dixville Notch, New Hampshire. And I applied 3 days before the deadline, was able to get in. And this place agreed to give me chef coat and knives and another place to stay.
Yeah.
And I agreed, took a little bit of money I had saved up, bought a truck, drove to New Hampshire, and all of a sudden I was now living in New Hampshire working at a resort called the Balsams.
The Balsams. Okay. And then did you go right into the kitchen there?
Yeah.
Okay.
But again, in order to get into there, I made a fake resume and took all the positions that I was a dishwasher or cook at,
Yeah.
and just said that I knew a lot more than I did. And they actually looked at my resume, and they thought I knew how to cook a lot more than I did. So I got there, and it was like an apprenticeship program through the ACF.
Yeah.
And so it was a 3-year program. And the whole idea was you start out year 1, you're only in Garmager or over here. Year 2, you get a little bit more responsibility. Year 3, only guys that had been there for 3 years would go on the hotline.
Yeah.
And for some reason, I was the last person that they let into this thing. And literally my first day, they put me on the hotline.
Because they had seen your resume and they're like, this guy can bang.
Yeah, they're like, this guy's got all sorts of experience.
Let's do it.
Yeah.
And then what was that like?
It was nuts. This place would do 700 covers a night. And
that first service, though, did you do well? Did you survive? What was that service like?
the first service was, I was on the crab cake station, which, probably would have been the easiest thing in the world now. But back then, I was just It was crab cakes, wilted spinach, and Grabiche sauce. And if I think about it, literally the pickup was like, so all the crab cakes were already seared. You just put them in the oven by the sheet tray, you know, and then held them hot. And then the spinach, they would wilt like a bunch of spinach at a time. And then hold that hot.
This sounds like possibly the easiest service I've heard of in my life.
And then it was like Grabiche sauce that literally was like, you know what I mean, like just dolloped on these crab cakes. And so, yeah, it should have been. And I don't think I completely went down, but I did not have a clue what I was doing.
Okay.
I was like, do I temp every single crab cake with my thermometer? And I didn't understand the concept of, like, firing or, like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I was
so
just
like fire, and you're like, yeah.
I was just like, all right. And then there's one chef up there, Chef Harmon. He was really awesome, worked with me a lot.
Yeah. So they at that point, they realized, they were like, okay, maybe he's not as good as he says he is on his resume. Did they ever question it? Or they were like, hey, man, you know, what's up?
That ended up being truly, I can say, one of the hardest, like, times of my life.
Okay.
I had never, throughout high school and everything, you know, even when I was, like, getting in trouble, I always had, you know, my friends. And I never was, like, an angry kid, you know. And I also never, like, really partook in, like, bullying anyone or getting bullied. It was just not something I ever, like, experienced. And working there, truly, I, like, got bullied. Like, legitimately bullied every day. And you had, you know, 20-something guys. And up in New Hampshire, all those kids, every single one of them spent, in their high school, they spent 4 years in, like, a culinary program. You know, like a technical vocation, right? And I, you know what I mean, made milkshakes and served French fries at Disney. Yeah. And then before that, I made pancakes. And then I was a dishwasher. And I would cook at home all the time. I loved cooking. And so I rolled up there, and then they threw me on the hotline. And I don't think it was like I think it was like a just cuz thing. Like, they're like, oh, yeah, let's put them over here, you know?
Yeah.
It was a chef's first year doing this. And so all the kids were just pissed at me.
Yeah.
I had and rightfully so, I had no experience. I was working a station that everyone else would have taken 2 years to work. Yeah. You know? And so there was this one guy there, Jeremy Metzik, and he was just a total dick. I hope he's doing great now, but at the time. And he was supposed to be like the lead on the hotline, you know? Yeah. And he honestly just would take, like, every step possible to make sure I was not set up for success. Yeah. And we would do these
sabotagers.
Like, total sabotage.
Yeah. You know what? Fuck you sabotagers out there.
Yeah.
Right, this is a message from Sucio Talk. If you're caught in the walk-in over-salting some shit on purpose because you want to fuck somebody over, I will fight you. You understand me? In these streets out here.
Yeah, thank you, David.
Yeah, fuck that.
And it was legitimately that. It was, you know what I mean, like, over salting sauces. Like, we would do these, like, split shifts where you would go in the morning and prep, like, 7 to 10 and then come back and work service. And someone else is supposed to set your station up for, like, a 400, 500 cover night.
Oh, my goodness.
And every time I would come back in 1 hour before service, and this kid would never set my station up. And every day I would figure out a way to get set up and learn how to do these things, you know? Yeah. It all clicked for me the first time I figured out counting. Like, and it was a very strange system. I don't know if you've ever seen anything like this. Have you ever heard of table d'hôte?
No.
So it literally...
it was a term on a culinary school thing, but that's all I remember. That's not... Nobody's brought that up in years.
Yeah, and then this place literally was ran like... They tried to run it exactly like how a Scoffier would run a kitchen. We all wore neckerchiefs. Tall chef hats, neckerchiefs. You get, like, your nails inspected, like, everything every day, right?
Yeah.
And the way that service worked was everyone had like an options package.
Yeah.
It was just like a cruise ship, right? And I have not seen anything like this since in my life. And so the kitchen was the size of half a football field. No joke. Massive.
Whoa.
And you'd be working a station, and to place, there was no tickets. To place an order, they would come up and put a dish cover, right?
Yeah.
A cloche, one of those metal ones. And you would count your cloches, and however many cloches, you just had to be ready for that many dishes.
Yeah.
And
so
then when
it wasn't even order fire. It was fire.
Yeah.
It was like...
And then to pick it up, they would just put a plate up.
Yeah.
And as soon as the plate went up, you're supposed to get the food out the door.
Okay.
And so the first time that I really figured out like how to count all my cloches, count all my mise en place, and like get a good running count the whole night, as opposed to just nonstop sandbagging everything.
Yeah.
Was that I remember it was like I was doing this cassoulet dish with like 3 scallops, 2 shrimp, and you know the beans and the cassoulet and everything. And literally it was one of those nights where everyone was like, "All right, Jason's gonna go down tonight."
Yeah.
And I made a point to not go down, and that was like kind of like the turning point. After that night, started getting a little bit more respect from everyone.
Yeah, for sure.
But I didn't know anything. The first time, that is the place I cut an onion for the first time.
Okay.
And I literally cut it, the whole onion, cut the tip off, sliced the onion in half. Like whole,
Yeah,
like this.
like not the way you're supposed to cut it in half.
No, I didn't cut it in half and then do 2 halves.
You cut it in the equator.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
And then I totally, as I'm doing this, I slice my hand open. And then at this stage, all the chefs got called over and are like, "Why are you cutting the onion like that?" And I'm like, "This is how I've always cut onions." While trying to make sure they don't see my gash in my hand. And so I had to proceed with chopping the entire onion while my hand was bleeding. And they're like, "That is the worst way we've ever seen to cut an onion."
No, it reminds me of one time I did a demo for the front of the house team at Charter Oak. And now they're all going to know. But I cut myself so bad, but was able to get a glove on before it started spurting all over everything. You know? So I got that first one on, and then I slipped the second glove on, you know, just to make sure that, you know, nothing came out. And the GM after is like, "Hey, I saw you put that second glove on. Did you cut yourself?" And I'm like, "Who else knows?" I was like, I just embarrassed myself in front of the whole front of the house team, man. What the fuck? So you're doing these services, you're getting your ass kicked, you're getting some respect now. And how much time are we into this restaurant now?
So I stayed there a little over a year. Mm-hmm. One day I told the chef there that I wanted to work for a chef named Thomas Keller. And he thought that was the funniest thing he had ever heard. And so that was about halfway into my time there. I told him that, and from that point on, he nicknamed me Keller. And then, like, there's one night in particular, literally, I had messed something up, and he came back into the kitchen and started chucking plates at me. Mm-hmm. Smashed one on my leg, smashed one behind me, and just was like, "It's like, come on, Keller, you'll never get it.
Yeah.
You will never figure this out. You think you could ever work at the French Laundry?" And that was a moment when I knew that at some point I could never work for the chef. You know, I used to at that time in my life, my greatest fear in the entire world was the day that I was going to have to introduce that guy to my mom.
Yeah.
And my mom was always my biggest supporter. She would anything Chef Keller related, she would send me, you know, recipes, clippings, anything, you know. When I wasn't there for the holidays, she would make dishes from Chef Keller's recipes, you know, as a way to for us to still bond, you know.
Yeah.
And I used to think about it. I was like, how, it was like 3 years away, but I was like, how am I going to introduce this? I despise that moment. Mm-hmm. And so we would shut down twice a year there to go do internships because the weather would get so bad, or externships. And so I ended up doing mine at a resort in Georgia called Sea Island, about 5 hours from where I was previously, so closer to my family. And I went down there, and for a hotel, it was just a very progressive hotel.
Yeah.
And a very talented cast of chefs.
Yeah.
And one day I told these guys I wanted to work at the French Laundry, and I was expecting the same response.
Just
And-
laughter and ridicule.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the chef was like, good, you should.
Yeah.
And you could make it there, too, if you wanted to.
That's awesome.
And
That's
so,
what you need. You know, that motivates you. And also, the fucking guy who said you couldn't do it motivated you. You know?
100%.
And it's crazy how both of those things motivate you, because I've had chefs tell me you can't cook, you can't season, you'll never be a chef. You know what I mean? And I don't know if it's because they've been told those things, because I think that's why they say those things. But it just made me so angry that it made me want to be better than them. You know? And I don't know if that's the right way to motivate somebody, but God damn it, it's motivating.
Yeah, you know, I don't know if it's the right way or not. And the way I look at it is it's like we don't really allow anything like that in Truffle Shuffle, because ultimately, if that was the right way to motivate people, we would still want to work for those people.
Exactly. I
You
hear
know?
you. Yeah.
Like, if there was some sort of gem in that, we would still go back and try to work. We would still, today, both of us would be working for those people.
Exactly.
You know?
Yeah.
But it also, you also need that kind of devil's advocate at times. So I don't know what it is. I don't know what the right way to consistently motivate people is. Mm-hmm. I just know Chef Harry sucked.
Yeah. Fuck you, Chef Harry. All right, wherever you are.
And so I I go down to Georgia. These guys, really cool what they're doing. They have an apprenticeship program.
Yeah.
A lot of young guys, really cool. And I went to the chef and I asked if I could join the apprenticeship program down there. And so he told me that I could join, but I needed to have a conversation with Chef Barry and let him know that I was going to work at Sea Island.
Yeah.
Have a face-to-face conversation. And at this point, I had taken that truck that I had and packed everything in it with the goal of never coming back to New Hampshire.
Yeah.
And so I finished out my externship program and then drove all the way back up to New Hampshire. And then it took me 3 months to work up the courage to tell Chef Barry that I wanted to go back to Georgia. And then I eventually did. I know it was the easiest conversation of my life. He was like, okay, great. Trisha has the paperwork. Just fill it out.
Yeah.
And I was like,
that's it. Relief though, you know?
oh, yeah, I'm
Can
like
move on.
every day thinking about it, like, how am I going to tell this guy today?
Yeah. Well, you got it done. And so you're in this environment with these people that, you tell them, I want to work for Thomas Keller. And they said, fuck yeah, let's do it. So what happens then?
So I go back to Georgia, end up working there for about 4 years total.
Yeah.
And finished my apprenticeship program, graduated the apprenticeship program. Loved working there. A lot of really good experience, and at this point, I had a lot to learn, but I had built like the kitchen chops,
Yeah, for
knew
sure.
how to use knives, knew how to work long days in the kitchen, knew how to fire things.
To move and not burn anyone. And,
Yeah.
Work safely.
Mm-hmm.
Fuck yeah. So you had the chops and then...
So go down there, work for 4 years, finish the apprenticeship program, get to the end of it. They offered me, a very good position, and ultimately I was like, listen, my dream is to work at the French Laundry. I've never, at this stage, I was about 20, right? 20, 21. I had never even seen a Michelin star restaurant.
Yeah.
Never been in one, never seen one. You
hear about it, yeah.
Yeah, you hear about the apricots and the ceps and the different ingredients that you don't get in Georgia.
Yeah.
Our truffles were truffle peelings in a
Yeah.
can, and those were awesome. you
Yeah,
know?
exactly. Yeah, for sure. I remember like opening things like that and being like, "Yeah, baby, we're about to use these truffles right now," And then the fast forward to the first day where I was when I went to go stage at Meadowood, and I look over, and Chef David Kinch is chopping an enormous mound of black truffles, and then mind blown even further when I found out how much they actually cost.
Yeah.
I was like, what the fuck? This guy was rolling with like 5 G's on his cutting board. Like, that's pretty badass.
Yeah, when I got to New Hampshire, literally, because I had read so many books, right? And every time I read foie gras in a book, I never heard anyone say it. So for like 3 years, I thought it was foie gras. Because I had read about it, I had never heard anyone say it.
Yeah.
And so basically, I get to Georgia, get done with my apprenticeship program, and I just asked them for 2 weeks. I was like, can I have 2 weeks to go stage at restaurants? And they're very supportive. You know, they're a little upset and supportive, you know.
Yeah, I see.
They wanted me to stay, they wanted me to work there, but they also, you know, understood. And so, one of the chefs there, he didn't want me to go, and he had actually worked at the French Laundry. And so I asked him if he would write a letter of recommendation, and so they wrote me a really nice letter of recommendation. He said he didn't know anyone else still at the restaurant.
What was his name?
Chef David Carrier.
When did he work there?
So he worked there with Manilo and Grand Achatz.
Okay.
So in Grand Achatz' cookbook, Life on the Line, he talks about taking one guy with him from the French Laundry, and that was the chef that I worked for in Georgia.
Oh, okay.
He talks about there's this one guy that literally used to sweat while turning artichokes.
Yeah.
He would do it so fast, and that was Chef David. And so I worked for Chef David, and he came in about 2 years of me being at Sea Island. And so, incredible chef. I love all those guys a lot. And, but they did not pick up the phone and call over to the French Laundry for me to just roll up, you know. And so I still had to figure that part out on my own. And so they gave me the 2 weeks off. It was the first 2 weeks I had ever taken in my career at this point.
Yeah.
And I just hit up Craigslist, and I lined up 11 stages in 14 days.
11 stages.
11 stages, yeah. And so I had a couple days open for the French Laundry. And no matter what I did, nobody would answer.
Yeah. Were you driving? Were you flying?
So I flew out and then rented a car.
Okay, got you. So all California stages.
All California,
Okay,
yeah.
gotcha.
All in San
What
Francisco.
restaurants?
And so first day was SPQR.
Okay.
Awesome restaurant, really good culture, really cool guys.
Mm-hmm.
Next day was Octarello,
Okay.
and then Alexander Steakhouse.
Mm-hmm.
Che TJ was in there.
Oh, shit. That's
Meadowood.
Costa stomping grounds
Yeah.
back in the day. Shea TJ.
So worked at Che TJ and
Hold up. This Meadowood stage is very infamous.
Yeah.
We hear about it.
Yeah, I
There's
bet.
employees there. So you were the guy that crashed the car, right? You crashed your car after the stage was over. Am I right?
I think it was no. It wasn't even. I didn't even get the benefit of being after the stage was over. It was the second to last day.
Okay, got you. Okay.
Yeah.
So you staged for 3 days.
Yeah.
Okay, and then on the second day.
Second day. So the Meadowood stage.
Yeah.
Yeah. So at Meadowood, and so luckily I staged at Meadowood after I landed this thing at the French Laundry.
Yeah.
So I'm at Meadowood. A really good friend, Ian Cairn, set up this stage.
Yeah.
Really excited. Honestly, I love the video they had online.
Dude,
And so-
that's what inspired me. I was like, what? I'm going there tomorrow.
Yeah. And the way they did the menu format, right?
Yeah, no menu. I was like, what?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I was like, I gotta go check this out. And so, I get there and again, have no understanding of Michelin star cuisine, right? And the first thing that they asked me to do was juice all these vegetables for like a vegetable jerky for the bar, right?
Uh-huh.
And so it was like peppers, carrots, and something else. And legitimately, I had never juiced anything.
Yeah.
I never used like vegetable juice.
Never used the Champion juicer?
Never used the Champion juicer. I had only at the Balsams I made.
You know what's funny? We probably used the same juicer.
Yeah.
Wow.
And so with that juicer,
Yeah.
right? So the way, if anyone doesn't know, the way you're supposed to juice stuff is if you're making carrot juice, you juice the carrots, and then you have the carrot juice, and then that's that project. And then if you're juicing red pepper juice, you clean the juicer and go into the red pepper juice. And so the first project that John gave me, Chef John, was to juice these
Chef
vegetables.
Johnny gave you the job.
Yeah.
That must have been when he was still on the line.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
And so I juice all the vegetables together.
Ah.
Yeah, first project. And don't even know I did anything wrong.
Yeah.
I'm like, all right, I got it done. Here it is. And he's like, did you juice everything together? I was like, yes. He's like, all right. And that was the moment where I'm pretty sure they just gave up on me. They're like, this guy's not
Like,
gonna
this
work.
guy doesn't have it.
And
That's
so,
funny.
I did some more projects. At one point, even at Meadowood, I was julienning the sunflower petals.
Oh, yeah, baby.
And, I just bought
That is one of the hardest things to do. That's one of those things that, because I got there after 8 years of cooking, right? So here I am. I'm like, yeah, man, my knife skills are good. And, really just tells you that your knife skills are terrible. And you're like, these little sunflower petals are better than me right now. You're sitting in that little room, in the refrigerated room. You're like, what am I doing?
And it's a dope dish, though.
Yeah, it's a sick dish. And, I was able to, do the chilled pasta with sunflower XO. And that's all, because I learned to work with sunflowers from Chef Costa. You know what I'm saying?
And
So
so,
you juice all this together. You done sunflower petals.
so I'm doing the sunflower petals, slice part of my finger off.
Oh,
Right? And again, I thought, so I cover it up, go to the bathroom, getting it fixed up. There's a server in the bathroom. He comes back to the kitchen. He's like, yo, there's this guy bleeding everywhere in your bathroom right now.
yeah.
Come back into the kitchen. Everyone's staring at me, right? This is day 2, right? And I'm like,
The stash from
oh my God. And then that night, basically, the way Meadowood works is they valet park your car,
Yeah.
right? Or maybe that's how I thought it worked. But basically, I rolled up and they took my car, parked it somewhere else. And then we got done at the end of the night, and it was kind of like a find your car type thing.
Yeah.
And so it ended up being all the way at the top of the hill, right? And what I do want to say is that at Meadowood, they don't have curbs, right? There are no
Straight boulders.
right? And so, which is, for the clientele that comes to Meadowood, they probably don't need curbs, right? And so, as I'm coming down this hill, there was a broken off piece of boulder, right? That basically, I'm coming down the hill, it catches my wheel and then takes me, and I smash directly into the rest of the boulders. And I'm doing one of these in this really nice Mustang rental car that I had.
You've been renting a car to look the part. Fuck yeah.
And I get to the end of the hill, the entire bumper is underneath the car.
Oh.
And then, no joke, every single cook then drives by me. Just staring at me.
And at this point, you're like, I need help.
At this point, I'm like, Jesus Christ.
I'm not getting the job, guys.
I'm
You
not
already
getting
had the French laundry joint, so you're good.
Well, I knew I was not getting a job at Meadowood. And I also knew, the level of cuisine, even if I got a job, I would have got fired in a couple weeks,
Well, I remember after a while of, you started Truffle Shuffle, and I was like, yeah, my boy Jason started Truffle Shuffle. He's like, I know that guy. And I'm like, at this point, I had already heard this story. And I'm like, no, you don't. I just walked away. I can't let him remember that it was him. That's so funny. So, good on you for fucking finishing your stages, even though you got a job. That's commendable, man. Nobody does that,
Yeah, I put the bumper back I ripped the bumper off, put it in the back of the car. And I took my phone out of a cup of coffee.
Ooh.
And then I hooked it to the stereo, and through that, it played the navigation. And somehow, and this has happened to a lot of people that come from Napa to Stage. You're looking at, like, for a hotel on hotels.com, and it says Santa Rosa is, like, 6 miles away.
Yeah, but it's 45 minutes.
Yeah. So I'm saying
the windiest, most dangerous
Yes.
roads.
So, yeah, so I drive that home with a wrecked car while only listening to, because the screen was dead, only listening to the navigation talk to me.
Which cuts out halfway on the
Yes,
mountain.
yeah.
Wow, not a good day.
No.
But okay, it's fine. So, French Laundry, Meadowood, where else?
And then Alexander Steakhouse.
Okay, got you. SPQR, Aquarello.
Yeah, and so maybe not 11 stages, 11 days lined up.
11 days lined up. Got you.
Yeah.
So multiple day stages, okay. And all these places, were you willing to work there, or did you say the laundry is where I want to be?
So honestly, coming out from Georgia and the hotel that we worked at, it was really high standards.
Yeah.
So I came out and I was, on some levels, I was impressed at, like, how far I had come. And first thing, like, I guess I didn't really understand. I didn't understand at the time what one Michelin star meant.
Yeah.
And so I came out and SPQR was awesome. The chef was so cool there. Aquarello was incredible. Suzette Gresham was so awesome. There was no way it was going to work at Meadowood. Incredible restaurant, though. And then, Alexander Steakhouse wasn't really my style. And then Che TJ was just kind of a smaller kitchen, Mm-hmm. And so the French Laundry just had the magic for me,
Yeah. And, you walk in for your stage, and what do you remember? Like, what was that like? This place that you had held so high in your mind, and you're finally there.
Yeah, so everywhere I had lined up got it lined up. The French Laundry, nobody would respond to me. Mm-hmm. And so the one thing that Chef David did tell me before I came out, he's like, you have to do something big to get their attention.
Yeah.
And so before I left, I was at Staples.
Yeah.
Getting my resume printed, right? And when I went to get it picked up at Staples, they have this giant printer.
Yeah.
And so I get my resume, I look at this giant printer, and I'm like, can you print this resume out on there?
Yeah.
And the guy at Staples was like, what? I was like, can you print my resume out on that printer? And he's like, yeah. And so I print, and then this is my chef saying I have to do something big to get their attention.
Right.
So I printed a life-size version of my resume. like it would fit on a bed.
How did you drive this thing to fucking Yountville?
So I took it with me on the plane, right? It rolled up in a tube, and it fit in the coat rack on the plane.
Okay.
Right? And then I put it in the back of this Mustang. And so basically, I have this life-size version of my resume. I have my little resume. I have a suit, and then I had this backpack that I had bought.
Resume.
Yeah.
For all you who are out there, you all have little resumes. 8 by 11, little.
And my thought process at the time was like, not that I had done anything impressive, right? Which I thought I did, but I hadn't.
Yeah.
I got named Employee of the Year at this resort, and it was it was a 20-star resort, really nice place, but truly nothing special.
Yeah.
And so my thought process honestly was if they kick me out, I'll leave them with this, and someone will look at this.
Yeah, for sure. Someone has to look at that.
And they'll either be like, this guy's a total jackass, or maybe we should give him a call.
Yeah. So
I did not. There's been a couple of people that tried to get a job at the laundry by touting themselves,
Yeah.
One time, this kid sent in. This is pretty funny. This kid sent in. The kid sent a chef jacket, the French Laundry chef jacket, to Chef David with his name on it. Straight out of culinary school, right? And he went and bought a chef jacket and had the French Laundry embroidered and then his name, and then sent it in. And we thought that was the funniest thing in the world. We're like, what if they hire him and then on his first day, because only sous chefs have their name on the jacket at the laundry.
Yeah.
Like, first day is like, all right, you're going to work the pass with Chef David. And that was one of those, like, internal jokes at the kitchen that we literally laughed at for, like, 10 hours.
Yeah.
Like, imagining a culinary intern working with Chef David on his, like, running the pass his very first day.
And did that kid stash?
No, they did not call him back, nothing. So I wasn't trying to do that, right?
Uh-huh.
I wasn't trying to say that I really had anything impressive. I just wanted an opportunity to work hard.
Yeah.
And so, basically, I'm in California, right? Back up a couple days from Meadowood. In California, I'm at SPQR the first day. I literally got off the plane, went to the restaurant. Next day, woke up, and I had about 4 hours before I had to be at the restaurant. And truly, I went to the mirror, looked at myself, and I said, either you're going to make a decision or you're going to regret this for the rest of your life.
Yeah.
And I put on this suit that I had. I got this backpack. I grabbed both resumes, the big resume and the little resume, and I started driving to Napa.
Yeah.
And it took me about an hour to get up there.
Yeah.
And when I got to Napa, I was so blown away.
Yeah. It's a beautiful place.
And there's nothing like that in Georgia,
Hell
right?
no.
Or Florida. And I turned into Yountville. I get on the Washington Street.
Yeah.
And I knew the French Laundry was on 6640 Washington Street. So once I'm on Washington Street, then literally, like, anxiety like I have never experienced creeps in.
Yeah.
And so I start driving down the road, right, and this insane level of anxiety hits me. And if you have never been there before, every building looks like it could be the French Laundry.
Yeah.
You know?
Even the bank. I'm like, yo.
Yeah.
This would be a nice restaurant.
And so I see this place, and I'm like, oh, okay, that's not it. That's not it. The next place, I'm like, oh, okay, that's not it. And then eventually I see the French Laundry. And, you know, all this culmination, like, getting ready for this point in my life, and something in my head, I was like, I'm not ready.
Yeah.
And I keep driving the car. And, you know, I call my mom, I tell her, and I go into this, I pull into the spot called Ranch Market.
Yeah, yeah.
And I walk in there, and I walked in there to get a toothbrush and toothpaste, razor, and a shaving cream.
Yeah.
And even though I had just brushed my teeth and shaved like an hour ago.
Yeah.
And when I walk in, I see all the wine, right?
Yeah.
And I'd never seen that much wine in a little store like that, you know?
Yeah.
Because that doesn't happen in Georgia.
Yeah.
And so I walk over there, I start looking at the wine, and there's one bottle, it was Schaefer Relentless. And it was $94, and at the time I had $110 in my bank, and I still had, like, you know, 5 days to be in California.
Yeah.
And so maybe I had like 150, right?
Yeah.
And so I was like, fuck it. And I bought the bottle of wine, brushed my teeth, shaved, got back in the car, started driving back to the French Laundry, gave myself a pep talk, got ready to do whatever it took to get a job there, punched the mirror out of my little car, and then parked, walked up to the restaurant. When I got to the restaurant, there was 3 doors. The main door, the main blue door, a door that I could clearly see led to the kitchen.
Yeah.
And then a door that I now realized was just like a shed, right?
Yeah.
And at the time, there's a YouTube video of Timothy Hollingsworth talking about how he got his job at the laundry.
Yeah.
And he says that he went up and gave his resume to the hostess.
Yeah.
And so I was like, all right, I'll go in, I'll open the blue door, I'll give my resume to the hostess. And I at this point, I just have the bottle of wine and the little resume. The big resume is backup plan.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
And so, because again, I wasn't trying to, like, you know, I was literally just trying to make sure I got someone's attention. And I go to open up the blue door, the famous blue door, and it's locked.
Oh.
And so then my next option is the door that leads directly to the kitchen.
Kitchen, yeah.
And I'm like, all right.
It's now or never, baby.
And so I started walking towards that door, right? And I opened the door up. And you can imagine, like, the visual, right? Busy restaurant at the French Laundry, the kitchen, like, everything's white. All the chefs, they have their blue aprons, white chef jackets, the floors are white. Everything is so clean. Mm-hmm. Everyone's hair slicked back, right? No chefs don't look like that in Georgia, right?
Oh, hell no.
You know? Everyone looks super professional, and so I walk in, I open the door, the server walks past me, and my gaze follows her. And then she walks away, and then directly in front of me, within 3 feet, right, is Chef David Breeden, who is the chef de cuisine of the French Laundry.
Yes.
And whose name was on the resume, right? So I wrote it to Chef David Breeden.
Yeah.
And so I'm holding that in my hand. I'm holding the bottle of wine. I look at Chef David, and I said, Chef, if you have a moment of time, I would like to chat with you. And he looks at me, he looks me up and down, and he says, absolutely, follow me this way. And in my head, I'm like, what the fuck? Yeah. I'm like, holy shit. And we go outside, sit down at this table. I put the resume down to make sure he sees his name, and then I put the bottle of wine down to make sure he saw where it said Relentless. And he sees that. I'm in a suit, right? And he's like, you can just tell in his head, he's like, who is this kid?
Yeah.
You know? And I was like, Chef, I know you're very busy. I'm out here staging for 2 weeks. I'm an apprentice. I just graduated from, Sea Island Resorts.
Yeah.
And I just want to see if there'd be an opportunity to work, to stage at the French Laundry for a day.
Yeah.
It has made such an impact on my career thus far. And I would love to spend some time here. I'm just looking for an opportunity to work hard.
Yeah.
And we literally chatted for like 45 minutes. And he asked me about Georgia. He asked me about, when towards the end of my time at Georgia, I was running the breakfast restaurant there.
Yeah.
And so he was really impressed with he told me this later, but he was like, oh, if this guy can cook eggs for 300 people, I can get him to cook fish or whatever,
Yeah.
And so, answered every question. And what I didn't know at the time was that there's kind of 3 chefs I worked with. There's 3 or 4 chefs I worked with at Sea Island. One was Chef David Carrier, who was Grant Ackett's sous chef at one point.
Yeah.
Another was a guy named Daniel Zeal, who worked under a chef named Scott Crawford.
Okay.
Now, Scott Crawford was actually Chef David Breeden's chef at the Woodlands back in Tennessee.
Whoa.
And I didn't know that at the time, but Chef David put that together. And so, he put that together, and I think that's what sparked just enough curiosity to continue talking to me. And not just, he was a very busy chef,
Fuck yeah.
And so...
This is lunch service, right?
It is lunch service.
Yeah.
And honestly, I learned later that it was his day off. He wasn't even supposed to be there that day. And so it just worked out perfectly, And so we had this conversation. We get to the end of the conversation, and he was like, do you have black socks? Yes, chef. Black pants? Yes, chef. White t-shirt? Yes, chef. Sharp knives? Yes, chef. I was like, okay. Be here Sunday at noon, the gold door in the back.
Yeah.
And I was like, yes, chef. And so I show up Sunday at noon, gold door in the back. At the time, honestly, I thought he was messing with me. I was like, what restaurant has a gold door?
Yeah.
And why would they put the gold door in the back? And so truly, I was like, all right, well, this sucks.
Yeah.
I'm getting punked,
Yeah.
And I show up. There's a gold door in the back, and I start walking towards it, and there's this other guy, tall, skinny-looking guy, glasses, basically shaved head.
Yeah.
And he's, like, running towards the door with a Lexan full of mise en place, right?
Yeah.
And you could tell it was very organized,
Yeah.
But you could tell that at no point had he thought about opening the door.
Yeah.
Right? And so I reach forward and I open the door. And then he, like, notices me. And he's like, oh, thanks. And then I was like, hi, I'm Jason. I'm here to stage. And that actually, the first person that I ever saw at the French Laundry after I talked to Chef David was Tyler.
Whoa. Tyler Vorse.
Yeah.
He's from episode 1.
Yeah.
Awesome. It couldn't be a better person to be the first person you met at the French Laundry.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So you meet him, and then
he went and, got Chef, and then I staged that day. And then at the end of the day, Chef David told me to give him a call when I got back to Georgia.
Yeah.
Gave him a call when I got back to Georgia, and he offered me a position.
Very cool. And then at this point, is there any lag in you going back, or did you just get on a plane and go right back?
He scheduled it 3 months out.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so you had time to get your shit together.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and so he scheduled it 3 months out, and this was before any of the renovations or anything, so there was, like, no turnover at the restaurant, like,
yeah, exactly.
Tyler had been there 4 years. Every single person that I talked to had been there a minimum of 4 years.
Wow.
Yeah, and so, I was very fortunate to get a position there.
Yeah.
And, I called my mom. I told my mom. She started crying, and then...
Of course, man. At this point, she's sending you clippings of Thomas Keller, and, that must have been a proud day for her. Yeah.
And so I had 3 months. I went back to work. I got another job.
Yeah.
And for 3 months, I was terrified at the potential of, like, I don't know, like I missed my flight or something.
Yeah,
and I don't have enough.
Break your leg, and then you're like, I can't,
Yeah, I was so scared of not having enough money in the bank to cover anything. So for 3 months, I got 2 jobs, and I worked. It came out to around 100 hours a week, and I did that for 3 months straight. And then got to the end of it, and honestly, I ended up in the hospital because my body started shutting down.
Yeah. You work so much sometimes, your body's just like, nah, we're not doing this anymore.
Yeah, and so one night I went to the ER, my throat started closing up, I got rashes, and apparently if you work that much, it's the same thing as having like an autoimmune disease attack.
Whoa.
Where your body can't fight off little viruses and things like that.
Yeah.
And so took a couple of days off and then flew to California.
Start your life. Now, did you get put up somewhere? Did you have an apartment?
So I flew to California.
Yeah.
After I staged, I started looking on Craigslist, found an apartment, and made a deal with this guy. It was $700 a month. I was like, yo, I'm gonna be out here this day, right?
Yeah.
And again, I didn't have anything lined up. I was like, I'm gonna be out here this day, and he agreed to hold the spot for me, and so got out there, got this apartment. I'm unpacking my bags. I put the suitcases in the closet. I look at the shelf, and written underneath this shelf was a note, and it said something like Yountville's been great. Now off to Chicago, DC. And it was a note from the chef I worked for in Georgia, from when he lived in that apartment when he worked at the French Laundry.
What the fuck?
Yeah.
That is crazy. But once again, we talk about that shit on the show all the time. Legacy.
Yeah.
Just, people knowing people through hard work and diligence. That's cool, man. Hell yeah. So then you knew that was a sign right there. You're like, I'm right where I need to be.
It was crazy.
So you're working at the laundry, and you start off as commis?
Start off as a commis, yeah.
Okay, got you. And then how long did it take you to kind of get out of there, get on the line?
So, the commis position was, in terms of, difficulty, was easier than, the stuff we were doing at Sea Island.
Uh-huh.
Because it was just simpler, At Sea Island, I would work 3 services a day. We just worked all the time.
Yeah.
And so I was a commis for about a month. And then I moved up to PM Comey. I did that for a month. And then PM Comey, like Comey at the laundry is you do all like the little projects. And then PM Comey, you do kind of like pastas and eggshells and things like that.
Uh-huh.
And then the only job I didn't want to do there was to become the fish butcher.
Okay. Why is that?
There was another gentleman doing it at the time, and it was a position where you work directly with the chef de cuisine at the restaurant, and then you manage $5,000 to $6,000 worth of product a day.
Yeah.
And I was like, the fastest way I'll probably get fired, is the fact that I don't know how to cut fish.
Yeah.
And if I start cutting fish in a restaurant with, the fish costs $400 and you make one cut wrong, that might be a $20 cut, you know? And I'm like, well, that's one position I don't want to do. And then it's not like you work with the sous chef and who's maybe a little more lenient. You're working directly with the chef de cuisine of the restaurant.
Yeah.
And so I was like, all right, I'll do anything. I don't want to be the fish butcher. And after being there for 2 months, Chef David asked me if I would be the fish butcher.
And what do you say? Of course, yes, chef.
I said, yes, chef. He said, good answer. And I said, thank you, chef. And then, honestly, he unbelievably took me under his wing. Every Saturday, we would cut fish together.
Yeah.
And he was a master butcher. And so, I cut fish together with him every Saturday for like a year. And truly, cutting fish at that restaurant allowed me to honestly learn my philosophy of how I do things in life.
Yeah.
And so when I was cutting fish, it was unbelievably difficult to start.
Yeah.
I was so slow at the oysters. I would come in at 3 a.m. and I would stand on a milk crate and start shucking the oysters. And I had to stand on a milk crate because they were cleaning the kitchen, the overnight cleaners.
Yeah.
And so I'd stand on this milk crate and I'd start shucking these oysters. But then the only place I could stand was next to the door. And then it would be winter. And so the door would be open because they got to get all the water out. And you're shucking oysters and the oysters are cold. So for 3-4 hours, my hands would just be, I'd just be shucking these unbelievably cold oysters. And on average, that project should take an hour.
Yeah.
But I was just so slow at it. So I just kept trying to come in as early as possible. And it took me a long time to really get up to speed on everything,
Yeah, for sure.
Cutting fish, shucking the oysters.
I'm the same way, man. It always took me just a little bit more effort to get there.
Yeah.
And then you look around and the guys that are just doing it it's so easy, you're like, God damn.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, I felt that way my whole career, man. It's always I'm behind and I need to come in earlier and push harder in order to be able to be as good as these guys around me. Mm-hmm. But that's how you know you're in a good spot because everybody's better than you.
Yeah, 100%.
I'm going to make sure that I'm as good as these guys someday. It's very cool. So you're cutting fish and, you're with Dave and Brady for that year. What are you doing after that? Did you move up after that?
Yeah, so I got an opportunity to go on the line.
Okay.
And
what's the first station on the hotline you were in?
So the first station I worked was Garde-Manger.
Okay.
And so got on the line, worked Garde-Manger there. When I got on the line was when we were in the temp kitchen.
Yeah.
And so as fish butcher, I actually got the core award for the restaurant, which was really cool.
That's cool.
And so there's a time where, we had just moved kitchens and some people were traveling and whatnot. So we're short-staffed and I got an opportunity to kind of help the sous chefs lead the Comey team.
Hell yeah.
And it was really cool. And I got recognized by Chef Keller and Chef David Breeden and Michael Manillo. And it was, it meant a lot to me that they would give me that reward,
Yeah.
And so moved from there onto the line.
Yeah.
And then again, it's kind of back to, being at the Balsams, cutting that onion. Once I got in the line, at this point, I was very well versed I had been fish butcher for over 2 years. And so I was very well versed at the French Laundry's way of doing things.
Yeah.
But the kind of issue that I dealt with once I got onto the line, it wasn't that bad on the garmager, but then I moved to canapé, and then I moved to fish. And I worked the fish station for a long time. I was on the fish station for I was at the French Laundry for a total of 4 years. And I worked the fish station for like a year and a half. And when I was on the hotline, kind of the biggest thing I worked on there was just like being able to focus properly.
Yeah.
And so I was always kind of like that spaz cook,
Yeah.
And so a very bad ADD.
Hurricane. You're kind of like going somewhere. You're like, why am I here?
Yeah, it kind of what I figured out is I can focus for 50 seconds out of a minute.
Yeah.
But then there's 10 seconds where I don't even know what I think about,
Yeah.
And so in certain things that works great, but then like working the line where you're working with hot food, sometimes not the best.
Yeah.
And so my whole goal when I was at the French Laundry was to be a calm cook.
Yeah.
To figure out how to handle anything and be as calm as possible. And so while I was at the French Laundry, I actually started studying Zen Buddhism.
Yeah.
And so every Thursday I would go to this temple and I would stay the night there and I'd learn how to meditate. And it's the same temple that Steve Jobs used to go to.
That's in SF?
It's in just outside in Marin.
In Marin. Okay. What's it called?
Green Gulch.
Green Gulch. Got you.
And so I read Steve Jobs' biography, and in that he talks about a book called Zen Mind, Beginner's Mind, that was written by a Zen monk called Shunryu Suzuki. And Shunryu Suzuki started the San Francisco Zen Center.
Okay.
And so Steve Jobs said that this book changed his life. And I said, if there's a book that changed Steve Jobs' life, then I should probably read this.
That book, yeah.
And so I read it, and I went down, and I went to this temple, and I ended up meeting one lady named Emma Heller, who was, after the Dharma talk, she was selling bread, and I was asking about the bread, and I told her I was with French Laundry. She actually was in charge of the garden. And she's actually, there's an article about her where it's the top 10 women in Buddhism to know of all time. Like, since the start of Buddhism, and she's on that list. And then she ended up being my Zen teacher.
Whoa. So Zen teacher, what does that entail?
So there's a formal process where you take the Zen vows, and that's kind of a formal process. And while you take the vows, you sew a rakusu.
Yeah.
Right? And the rakusu is this little, it's the start of a robe.
Okay.
And so all monks that you see, the robes that they're in, entail what level of Buddhism they're at.
Okay.
Right? And they sew those. And so as they're training for that next level, they're literally sewing their robes.
Okay.
And sowing the knowledge and the seeds of what they're trying to learn.
Okay.
And so that's the formal practice. And then kind of the practice that I went through and am still going through was I would go down to this temple on Wednesday, and I would stay the night. I would help them clean dishes. I would stay the night. I'd wake up in the morning. I would meditate, and then I'd go down to the garden, and I'd work with this lady, Emila. And she just encouraged me to study the mind, like study how your mind works.
Yeah.
And where I think, honestly, I made a breakthrough was being able to look at how I talk to myself. And if I can say that there's ever been anything in my life, it was understanding truly how you talk to yourself. And so, like, even as we're doing this podcast and I am talking to you, you are talking to yourself twice as fast as I'm talking to you.
Oh, yeah.
And so everything you go throughout in life, you are talking to yourself. And how that voice talks to yourself will dictate a lot of how you feel about yourself.
For sure.
And what I learned was I never spoke poorly to myself, but I would mimic the voices of the people that I thought would be angry with me.
Okay.
So literally, I would have Tyler's voice in my head. I would have Chef David's voice in my head. And when I learned that about myself, and I changed that voice from them roasting me about something to my voice saying, "Hey, Jason, it's okay. We will figure this out."
That's fine. Yeah.
Then the last year I was at the laundry was, honestly the most proud I've ever been of myself as a chef.
Yeah.
And it felt like I could go into service every day and, knock it out of the park no matter what.
Yeah. That's cool, man. That's self-growth like a motherfucker. Jesus.
It took a long time. It took a long time to get there,
Yeah.
And the more things that you have in your life where shit happened to you that you can't explain why it happened, a lot of kids come from broken homes,
Yeah.
And when you come from a broken home and things happen and you really can't explain it, the more erratic that voice will get,
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I make it a point to stay right in the middle. I'm gonna be nice to myself, but I'm also gonna be, hold myself to a certain standard. So every morning I wake up, I look myself in the mirror, and I go, "You're fucking amazing. You're a champion. Now shut the fuck up." You know what I mean? It's like humble yourself a little bit before you walk out that door. And that always kind of helps me, get into the mindset of having to be this, leader to my cooks and having to make decisions that affect what people are ultimately putting into their bodies, which is food. So that's something that you learn, after you're done being the erratic cook, that was crazy the way you put it. But it's like, yeah, you go from that being crazy and kind of like, not really thinking in a focused manner to going home and being like, I need to like think about this on another level than just like when I get to work, And once you start doing that, you start growing internally. And I'm super interested in that because you've told me about the Zen Garden before. And
we'll go down there.
Yeah, hell yeah, let's go. Hell yeah. Can anybody go?
It's open to the public.
Okay.
It's a little weird now, but
yeah, I know. Yeah.
They literally have probably like $50 million worth of land that was given to them by the guy that started Kodak.
Uh-huh.
And the only rule was that you have to operate a farm here.
Okay.
And then forever. And then it has to remain open to the public.
Okay.
And so you can go. They have a Sunday public program.
Yeah.
And then they have it's a very special place because it's one of the only places in the U.S. where it's in kind of a monastery-like setting, and then people live there full time.
Yeah.
A lot of the temples are kind of like part-time throughout the U.S., but people live there full time, so you get the feeling of what it's like to meet more than just one person that spent the past 30, 40, 50 years studying their mind.
Yeah. Now, when you say study their mind, there's processes to this, no? Like if you say you have a teacher, there's ways, right? They're telling you the ways to do it, or is it kind of like figure it out with these hints that I give you? Like what is the teaching like?
In Zen, there's all sorts of different teaching.
Okay.
And ultimately it comes down, and I am not a Zen teacher.
Okay.
Myself, but there's a Zen practice where when you start, they give you a riddle.
Yeah.
And and this is literally a riddle you'll deal with for 10, 15 years. And the whole goal is to figure out the solution to the riddle, and you have to keep coming back to your master with an answer.
Uh-huh.
Right? Or keep coming back to the top monk with an answer. And so from what I've heard, you eventually keep going back, and the Zen teacher just tells you no until you completely break down. And then after you completely break down, then they'll tell you yes. And so that's one way.
Uh-huh.
And I'm probably butchering a lot of the terms with this. And so the other way, and Zen means to sit. And so Zen Buddhism is a Japanese sect of Buddhism.
Uh-huh.
And it's focused on sitting meditation. And so in our culture today, you hear a lot about meditation, but honestly, when you spend time at the temple, nobody talks about meditation. They talk about sitting.
Yeah.
And then I've literally never heard anyone at that temple talk about enlightenment. They just talk about taking the time to study your own mind. And, honestly, the RZA put it the best way that I can explain it. And it's like, you go and sit with yourself for 3 days, and you will start to hear your voice. And the next best way I could explain it is that you can't have a relationship. Your relationship with the outside world will only be as great as your relationship is with yourself. And so Zen is kind of a study of first understanding that everyone in this world is suffering. The moment you die, the moment you're born, you start dying. Mm-hmm. You're living your entire life to die at one point. And so Zen is a study of life. And so it's a way, and I think it gets kind of bastardized, and I'm probably bastardizing right now, but I think it's very difficult. I think it honestly creates complications for people when they try to study Zen while also living a busy life.
Yeah.
You wake up in the morning, you're like, oh, I should have meditated for 20 minutes. And then there's actually studies done of like meditation apps and things like that are maybe like 2% as effective as like true meditation.
Yeah. Sitting down with yourself and just, that's it.
For example, when you sit in the Zendo, you don't close your eyes.
Okay.
You face the wall and your eyes are at the floor, and the whole thing is maintaining a certain posture. And as you're sitting there, you're just focusing, okay, my back hurts a little bit, or you break the posture, and then you just bring the discipline back. Yeah. And every time you bring the discipline back, right, like you sit with your hands like this, and if you slouch a little, right, in some temples, there's actually someone in the Zendo that goes and hits your back with a stick, and it brings you back. And so you're always coming back to the moment. So your mind's over here, right, and you notice something's wrong, you come back to the moment. And so it's kind of just a practice of living in the now.
Whoa. Well, we just went down a huge rabbit hole from the French Laundry, but that's okay.
Yeah.
We're getting to know Jason. But let's go back to the restaurant. So you're about to come to the end of your time, no?
Yeah, so, I had been there about 4 years, and I kind of had a decision to make. Either I stay at the restaurant, I really wanted to work the meat station, and then potentially move on to being a sous chef at the restaurant.
Yeah.
And so I started looking at what other potential options there could be, and at this time, I'm broke.
Yeah.
And I find this random ad on Craigslist, and it was for a job in Wyoming for like 2 months, and it was going to pay more money than I had ever had in my bank account, and I was looking for a chef and a chef's assistant. And at this time, I had started dating who is now my wife, Sarah.
Shout out to Sarah, because she made this delicious banana bread here, and I haven't offered you any, but I am literally going to eat this whole thing.
Yeah, she did awesome with that. And so it's me and Sarah, and find this ad, responded to the ad, they sent us some pictures, showed Sarah the pictures. She was unbelievably pumped about the thought of us going on an adventure to Wyoming, and then got on a phone call with the guy and learned more about the position. And basically the only question this gentleman asked, his name was Mitch, was, his question was, do you get paid by the French Laundry? I was like, well, what do you mean? He's like, does the French Laundry actually pay you money to cook there?
Yeah.
And I was like, yes. He's like, all right, well, then you're hired. And he was just trying to see if I was like just an intern,
Yeah,
or
just
if
a stage, yeah.
yeah, or if I actually worked there.
Yeah.
And so I was like, yes, they do. He's like, all right, well, listen, this sounds good to me. If it sounds good to you, then I say we do it. And It was like a 15-minute phone call, and I'm like, all right, Mitch, sounds good. Let's do it. And I agreed to take this job, not really having any clue about anything other than I'm going to be making, basically it was $10,000 a person a month. And I was like, well, that's going to put some money in the bank. Mm-hmm. And at the time, I'm making like $12 an hour,
Yeah.
And so I agreed to it. I tell Sarah, she's pumped, but then now I have to leave the restaurant.
Yeah.
And so take a couple of days. Eventually, I put my notice in. I talk to Mitch again, and then we tell our parents, and my mom and Sarah's parents were terrified.
Yeah.
They're like, you're leaving the French Laundry to work on a ranch in Wyoming, and you think you're going to make this much money? They're like, it's a total scam.
Yeah.
And I get back on the phone with Mitch, and I explain it to Mitch. I'm like, I just started dating this girl. Is there any way we could meet or something, And he's like, I understand. I totally understand. And so he's like, what days do you have off? I tell him what days we have off. And he is like, okay, I'll get you a flight. I'll send you the details tomorrow. And I'm like, okay. Next day, I get a text message from Mitch, and it's a couple of digits and numbers, right? Mm-hmm. Letters and numbers. And I'm like, what is this? Mm-hmm. And he's like, that's the tail number. And I was like, oh, shit. And so when you fly on a private jet, it's organized by the tail number of the plane.
Whoa.
And so this dude literally sent his private jet to come pick me and Sarah up from the Napa airport.
Yeah.
Right?
From the Napa airport.
From the Napa airport.
That's so convenient.
And went and got on this jet. I worked for 24 hours straight to get a bunch of food prep to be able to cook for him out there, to do like a little tasting,
Yeah. Did he request a tasting, or were you like, I'm just doing this?
I was like, I'm just doing this.
Okay.
And so fly out there and land. Mitch and his wife pick us up, take us to this ranch, and I mean, this is literally like out of a movie. You know what I mean? It's like 500 acres, beautiful ranch. You can house like 50 people there. Has like a full commercial kitchen.
Yeah.
With an outdoor little restaurant that you could seat up to like 30 people.
Yeah.
Wood-fired pizza oven. And we're just like, where in the hell are we?
Yeah.
And landed in a private jet, ended up on this ranch, and we, really locked the job in, and then flew back, told our parents, and they're all like, oh my God, this is like a movie. You guys got to write a book about this. And we're like, all right. And then spent about another month at the restaurant, and then went out to Wyoming and worked this gig for Mitch.
Yeah.
And turns out Mitch started a company called Super Shuttle back in the day, and sold it for a few $100 million.
Okay.
And then he, while growing Super Shuttle, he also had the largest fleet of taxis in America.
Okay.
And then when Uber and Lyft started coming out, he actually developed the software. He bought part of the software from the government. That's like, let's say you're on a mission, right? You drop this person here, they have to get to here. You have to give them GPS coordinates to get to there, right? And so that's the same software that Uber and Lyft uses.
Okay.
But he was the first civilian to use it for
his taxis.
No, he used it for Super Shuttle.
Oh, okay.
Which would pick up 10 people at the airport and take them to 10 different houses.
Oh, okay.
So he mapped the entire U.S. All the roadways, everything like that, right, to use with the software. And then he actually licensed that version of the software to Uber and Lyft.
Okay. And
so Uber and Lyft run all of their rides off of his software.
Whoa. And
so I learned, he's a very quiet guy. I learned all this over knowing him for a period of time. And so worked for him out there. He's, I think he's 82.
Okay.
Right? And then went back to California with the goal of honestly just saving up money, I wasn't exactly sure. We had this idea of taking a trip around the world. And so come back, land a job with, and we'll speed this part up to get to Truffle Shuffle, but basically land a job with a guy named I'm not allowed to say his name, but basically he was one of the executives of Apple.
Yeah.
Was responsible for creating the iPhone, and I was making more money than I had ever had in my life. And the first thing that I thought to do was take that money and invest it in a business of our own. And so while I was at the French Laundry, learned about truffles, loved truffles, and honestly, learned about truffles, loved truffles, and then kind of two things, I saw you could work your way all the way to the top at these restaurants, but then the next thing you do, right, you're starting completely from ground zero.
Yeah.
And one guy that I had interviewed with, I was like, well, how did you get to where you're at now? I always ask these questions. And he's like, well, I went to college for computers and then worked at this company, became the CEO. When that company sold, I owned a good majority of it. And I became, worth $1 billion.
Yeah.
And just that thought alone, I was like, how do chefs get so screwed over in this process?
Yeah.
They work just as hard or just as intelligent, but just because it's a slightly different business model, when you take a guy that works his way all the way to the top of the ranks, when he goes to leave, then he has to go out and raise $2 million to start a restaurant.
Yeah.
And then in this process, nobody has taught a chef about equity or an investment or how to run a business, you know. So then, he sells a portion of the restaurant, and then by the time he opens up that restaurant, and I kept seeing this happen again and again, it almost becomes a nightmare.
Yeah.
And then you're trying to figure out how to, raise money from investors and open a restaurant, all while creating the menu or even being open and running the team.
Yeah.
And so it was kind of this little bit of a disconnect of seeing my dad start a business from ground zero to what it was. And then seeing how chefs they don't necessarily own their businesses.
Yeah.
And so it's just a little bit of like, well, why do we have to get
money from other people to do it?
Money from other people for our passion,
Yeah.
And it's like cooking is a passion. Restaurants are a business. And so there was this kind of like inkling, right? And I was like, well, I don't know, but what if we started a business that we could sell for a large amount of money,
Yeah.
And it was just like that thought. And so the first idea we had was to start an app to sell truffles, which is a horrible idea. It would never work. But for about 6 months, I told everybody that would listen that is what we were going to do.
Yeah.
And so the first thing that we did, basically, I was making all this money working for this gentleman. I was literally bringing in around $10,000 a month working for him. And so after about 2-3 months, I got this kid, and we took 9,999 euros. That was a legal amount you're allowed to fly with.
Okay.
Strapped it to his chest, sent him to Italy, and he started meeting truffle hunters. And he would live with them, buy the truffles, send them back here, and then we would just hustle them to restaurants. We would just go door to door to restaurants. We would make lists in the morning. And then I was doing this all while working for this other gentleman. I was essentially his private chef, and so I would go in the morning, try to sell truffles. I'd cook lunch for him and his family, and then I would leave and say I had to go to the grocery store, and then I would try to sell more truffles, and then I would get done with dinner and then start the process all over again. And so basically since I started Truffle Shuffle, I always had like 2 to 20 pounds of truffles in a cooler in my car and a scale and everything that I was trying to figure out how to sell.
Yeah. So you're selling these truffles out of your car, and then when do you upgrade? When are you like, okay, this is taking off? When are you kind of realizing that like this is something that could work?
When we started the business and just dealing with that amount of money, I mean, we started off and the guy that we first started it with, he got really nervous when he was out in Italy and just dealing with that amount of money.
Yeah.
And he just went completely AWOL. And then I had to figure out how to continue getting truffles in. And as soon as he went AWOL, we got our first order from a Michelin star restaurant.
Yeah.
Right? And so I had to figure out how to get these truffles in and made some connections through Instagram and then got this first beautiful shipment in, right? Sold it to our first 2 Michelin star restaurant, which was Accarello, right? And then the next, 3 shipments were destroyed by customs. And so we lost, $8,000.
How'd they destroy it?
They would come in and we would ship them through DHL and they would land in Salt Lake City, Utah, where the customs person was, right? And what would happen is they would just get flagged for inspection, and they wouldn't even ever inspect it, but they would sit there for 4 or 5 days. And by the time the truffles got to us, they were terrible.
Yeah.
They wouldn't put them in a cooler, right? And so we learned. That's a big part of this business, just learning, the logistics of shipping it, right?
Yeah.
And so you want to ship it directly from where the hunters have found it to where your customs person is. That way you can literally go down there. I mean, some days now, when we were in the height of the season, we would call our customs guy 96, 150 times a day.
Yeah.
Right? Hey, we got these truffles coming in. You need to clear them. You need to clear them. You need to clear them. And they literally just look at them, make sure there's no dirt on them, and then clear them. That is all they do. They're not even checking for drugs or anything like that. They're just, and then they tape the box back up, cleared. And so, this kid goes AWOL, right? Yeah. And then we start losing all these shipments of truffles, but we're still pretty deep into this. You know what I mean? At this stage, we have told all these people we're starting this business. At some point, Tyler came out and started staying with me, and so it's me, Tyler, and Sarah living in a 400 square foot cottage. And before the cottage, I literally, while I was first working for this gentleman, me and Sarah lived in a car in San Francisco, and I saved up as much money as I could, and I'd go to a bar every night and write the business plan for Truffle Shuffle. And so it'd be I would go there and I'd first research what is a business plan, and then download it and then read one and then find a business plan template. And then I would input my version of what I thought Truffle Shuffle was going to be. And so we got that together and then got into this little cottage and started Truffle Shuffle. And so we get to a point where it's very difficult to get truffles in. And then all of a sudden we met this one guy. He likes to be referred to as the Kingpin.
Okay.
And so he is one of the largest importers of truffles in the United States. And it literally turns out that this guy lives one exit up from me in Marin. And so I met him through a chef, a friend of a chef, and meet this gentleman, go to meet him for the first time, right? Literally get the call that the third shipment of truffles doesn't come in, get the call from this gentleman, go to meet him, and we literally meet at a Starbucks, and he's tells me a story. He is from war-torn Kosovo. When the war broke up, he started buying government land, and he has government land, and he has truffle hunters on payroll, right? And so he owns the land, so nobody else can hunt there. And then he's able to support all these truffle hunters, where he pays them an annual salary, right?
Yeah.
And so he's would you like to see some truffles, right? And I was yeah. Go out to the car, and this guy literally pulls out 40 pounds of white truffles.
Oh, my God.
In the middle of Starbucks. We're at Starbucks.
It's stinking up the joint.
Everyone's looking over, you know what I mean? And I'm what? And I was could I buy some? He's yes. He's just pay me in 30 days. And I'm holy shit. And so, bought some truffles.
Got
and then
the front. The front
yeah,
man.
the front, and I was like, I never even knew that was a thing.
Yeah.
You know?
That's awesome.
And so started buying truffles directly from him, and so basically he became our importer and customs broker.
Yeah.
And that allowed us to go from, you know, being very close to being totally effed to having the supply we needed it when the chefs needed it. And so after that, we hit kind of a turning point, and by the end of that year, we started the business in November, right? Or we started it September 11th, and by the end of that year, 2018, we had broken $100,000 in revenue.
That is amazing.
And we didn't make any profit, but just the fact that we brought in $100,000 in top-line revenue, we were like, this is awesome.
Yeah.
And it was just sheer hustle. If we couldn't sell the truffles, we literally would cold call rich people to book private dinners. You know what I mean? Like, just sheer nonstop hustle. We were prepping these dinners out of this 400 square foot cottage with like a miniature oven, miniature fridge.
Yeah.
Like, all the truffles we stored in like mini fridges just stacked up on top of each other. Like, Tyler lived basically on the floor. We lived on the floor, you know. And so the little bit of, it was like you started to get a little bit of a taste of a freedom of what having your own business can do, you know? And we decided to, you know, continue Truffle Shuffle.
Yeah.
And ultimately, you know, we never wanted to be like truffle hustlers,
Yeah.
but we saw an opportunity to create something, you know, and and I think a lot of businesses start like this, you know, like, you see that I can buy this for this much and sell it for this much and make a profit.
Yeah.
And then as you do it, you hit a point where you're like, well, in order to grow this, I need 30 more of me, you know?
Yeah.
So then you ask yourself, well, how do I grow this without 30 more of me? And our answer for that was products. And we're like, all right, well, what if we don't have to sell it, if it's on a shelf, someone else will sell it, right?
Yeah.
The store will sell it or whoever. We just have to make it. We got to get it there.
Yeah.
And so we're like, all right, well, yeah, let's do products. And so we launched a Balinese truffle salt.
Now, this truffle salt, that was a pretty cool story, man. Like, you went to Bali,
Yeah.
right? And you hung out with this family that makes this salt. How long were you out there?
So me and Sarah went to Bali on our honeymoon.
Okay.
And so we got married in March. And
2018.
2019 now.
2019 now.
Yeah.
Okay, gotcha.
So we got married in March, and I hope that's correct. And
She's going to listen.
we went on our honeymoon. And we go on our honeymoon, we go to Bali, and we were there for about a week. And I just wanted to see how salt was made,
Yeah.
right? So we're in Bali. I knew that they made salt in Bali, but you can't find any information about it. There's no Balinese salt farmer has a website,
Yeah.
right? Like they you know, they just don't. They have, you know, touch phone or like the old Nokia cell phones. You know?
Yeah.
So no computers. None of them have a website. So, but what we did find is that in a little village called Kusamba, that they have had like previous salt farm tours there. So we're like, okay. And so we're about halfway through this thing. We decided to rent some scooters, and we drive up to Kusamba. We get to Kusamba, and we're literally in the middle of Kusamba, and it's not a tourist town. There's no tourists there, right? And so we're in Kusamba, stop the scooter, we're at the stoplight, and everyone is like, what are you doing here?
Yeah.
And I look around, and I see a sign that says, Kusamba Salt Farmer. It was like taped on the side of a building, you know, and I was like, I point to the sign, and these guys are like, oh, you want to see the salt farm? And I was like, yeah. And they're like, okay. And take me down this road, get to the end of the road, and it's like a port for a fast boat.
Yeah.
So there's literally like 1,000 scooters stacked up, right? And so they tell me to park the scooter, and so I park it next to all these other scooters. they told me to leave the helmet with the scooter, and it was crazy. All these helmets were still on all these scooters. Like, nobody messed with anyone else's stuff there. And they take me through this beach, opens up into a clearing. In this clearing, you see, like, these bamboo trays, right? And it's all this salt drying. And as we got closer, this lady woke up. She had this pink towel on her head, came out with a blue spoon with a heaping of this sea salt, right? And so I'm sure they had kind of like a system for this, and brings the sea salt out. And when I tasted it, it was the best salt I had ever tasted in my life. And we spent that afternoon with the family and learned about the salt farm. They showed us how they made it. And the process to make sea salt is unbelievably difficult. We won't get into it, but it takes about 30 days just to make sea salt, you know? And they told me essentially that they've been doing this for about 60 years. The grandmother there, her name was Wernie. Her husband just recently passed away. And the whole goal was to pass this salt farm on to their kids. But in the time that they've been growing this salt farm in Indonesia, they have factories.
Yeah.
The factories produce 2 tons of salt a day.
Yeah.
And so they're making everything by hand, right? And they can produce maybe 30 kilos a day. So, you know, I don't know, 0.5% or whatever that math is. And there's no way they can keep up. And so they had all this salt stacked up that a Japanese company was supposed to buy, because Japan is very close to Bali. And that company never came. And so we took just a 1 kilo bag of the salt home. Really with, you know we wanted to do a product, but I was like, I don't, is it truffle salt or, not really with a clear idea in mind. And when we got back here, we had got in this truffle powder, and we mixed the truffle powder with the Balinese truffle salt. We mixed it together, and then when we tasted it, literally, I looked at Tyler and I told him that this would make us $1 million. And it was just so spot on.
Yeah.
And so we decided to launch that as a product. And we had never launched a product before. And normally, we learned it takes companies like 2 years to do this.
Yeah.
We did not know that. So we start getting everything together, but the biggest issue is we don't have any salt. And then the WhatsApp number that the family gave me, nobody will answer.
Ugh.
And so we literally made the decision to fly all the way back to Bali.
This time you bring a film crew.
We brought Andy.
Yeah.
And got it all on film. And honestly, when I think about it now, like, we did not have a lot of money in the bank. We had no investors.
Yeah.
And to fly to Bali to get more salt, like, just our confidence in that back then is kind of like surreal to me now.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, that's like a $3,000 trip in a company that was only making like $30,000 a month.
Yeah.
And so we go back to Bali, we get this footage, we get this salt. When we showed back up, the family had actually kept my business card on their little hut. And they're like, we knew you would come back. And then we bought all the salt that they had stacked up from that Japanese company that didn't buy it.
Yeah.
Loaded it up into this tiny little car that we had rented. I thought it was a good idea to get this little car, and it was a horrible idea. We could have easily just got a nicer car, but we got this little. I thought it looked good for the video, and it broke down at every turn. It was such a bad idea.
There you go. Aesthetics will usually fuck shit up.
Yeah.
So, how happy was this family when you went over there and bought all that salt?
Dude, they were blown out of the water. Like,
that's so cool.
And, the biggest thing that made an impact to me was I was making a joke. I was like, do the kids work on the salt farm? And so, it's the grandmother, the son, another daughter. They both have spouses, and then there's kids. There's like 6 kids running around. And these kids had never seen face emojis. And so that is one of the greatest pleasures of my entire life is showing these kids. I held the iPhone to them, and then they would see like cat ears form, you know what I mean, or mustaches and things like that. I literally did that with them for like 3 hours. It was the funniest thing of my life.
That's amazing.
And what kind of made an impact to me is I asked them. I was like, do they work on the salt farm? You know, I was like, you put them to work on the salt farm, right? And honestly, I was kind of making a joke, but I honestly thought they worked on the salt farm.
Yeah.
And they're like, no, we work on the salt farm so they can go to school. And I was like, wow. I felt a little embarrassed, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And I was like, wow, that's awesome. And so they had so much pride in making this salt that this was their way of life. This was what they were contributing to the world, was creating this salt. And so we've been able to continue supporting that family, and we bring this salt back here, right? And we launched this as a product, and we put together this whole email campaign. And throughout this whole process, I read as many books as I can get my hands on. And so at this stage, I'm reading like product launch books and marketing books, and I'm trying to figure out how do we sell this, you know?
Yeah.
And I read this old book about like the email launch strategy, and I did not know that this strategy was like 10 years outdated. Right?
You were like, I got this new fucking thing. We're gonna kill it.
Yeah, totally. You know what I mean? And it was a very good strategy when email was first invented.
Yeah,
and it was basically this: like you keep sending these emails with a story, all anticipating like a day when it's available.
Yeah.
Right? But nobody cares. People want one email, quick copy, button to buy, right?
Yeah.
And so by the time we sent that last email for them to buy, we sold 2 jars of salt. 2 jars, $40.
Yeah.
We had enough for 10,000 units. And so we started going to stores and doing product demos in stores. And
that's right. I remember I'd call you and be like, yo, we're in this store right now. Hey, you, try some of this truffle salt. I'd be like, you're talking to customers that way.
It's a Balinese truffle salt. All the salt comes from a single family in Bali. It's made 20% actual truffles and a touch of mushrooms. Goes great with a little goat cheese and rusted bakery crackers. And honestly, it is unbelievable on some sliced tomatoes.
Damn.
We would say that like 400 times a day.
Yeah.
Right? And so we start doing that, and we go up to Oakville Grocery, and we start selling this salt, right? We started selling like 100 jars a day. And that's when we were like, all right, maybe we are really onto something. And selling 100 jars a day of this stuff, and then get to the point where we wanted to get into Whole Foods.
Yeah.
And somehow, basically, and I say somehow, but Chef Phil made a connection with us to a lady named Norma at Whole Foods. And Norma became our fairy godmother. And Whole Foods has this, litany of processes to get your product on the shelves. And she set us up as a caterer for the regional president's retreat.
Yeah.
So they were on a retreat, all the decision makers for Whole Foods, right, on a retreat. And they thought they were going to get a catered lunch. And what they got was me, Tyler, and Ian in a Whole Foods food truck at Hog Island Oyster Company.
Yeah.
And we cooked them the best 3-course truffle lunch they've ever had in their life. And we had the truffle salt on the table. We had truffle honey there. And we just pitched the product to them. And at the end of it, they're like, you guys are awesome. We're going to set you guys up to go global. Which means you go into every single store in one shot. And we were so pumped. We literally thought we had made it as a company.
Yeah.
Right? We're like, this is
it. Yeah.
We did the financial projections. We're like, yeah, we'll sell like 20 cases a week per store. There's thousands of people going in. Everyone's going to want this. And we put these projections together, and we start getting ready to go into 500 stores.
Yeah.
With no idea how much it's actually going to sell, you know?
Yeah.
And start ramping up. And what they did is they put us in 4 regions first. And so for about 90 days, and with like a sales quota to hit, right? And so we doubled the team. We went from 3 people to 6 people. And then we had, in total, we probably had like 15 people doing demos, you know?
Yeah.
And we split up between these 4 regions and just start selling this truffle salt. Literally, all of us are doing demos in Whole Foods stores. You can book 2 a day, right? So we're all in Whole Foods stores for like 16 hours a day.
Yeah.
And then we have other people, we've hired other people to go into the top stores, right? Any store that has good foot traffic, at the end of 2019, we were in that Whole Foods store doing a product demo for this truffle salt.
Straight hustling.
Literally every single day. And then we would sell truffles on the days we were not in the stores.
Yeah.
And so we eventually in February, at the end of February, we got the phone call from one of the regional presidents, and we got the green light to go into the rest of the stores. At this stage, we're at about 100. The goal is to get into 500.
Yeah.
And so it's for the truffle salt, truffle honey. And again, we think this is like our holy grail, right? We're like, we have found the scalable answer to this business. And we get that green light, and we get ready to go into all these stores. And to get ready for something like this, like, you got to think, like, you have no idea what they're going to sell, right? And if you need... So if you're selling to Whole Foods, you need cases, right? To get 6-pack cases made, right? You have to buy 10 to 20,000 at a time, right? The first time you get it made, each case is like around like $2, right? So we go from a business, right? We don't have any money, and now we need to figure out how to get, around $100,000 together. And so at some point we had brought in a little bit of investment, and then when we needed some money to launch in Whole Foods, Mitch came out and we did a presentation for Mitch.
Yeah.
And Mitch put $100,000 into the company for us to launch at Whole Foods. And so, just to speak to that, like, literally, we went from cooking for Mitch, cooking the food that he was eating on the table, to sitting at the same table with him.
Yeah.
And that just speaks to the level of character of who him and his wife are. And so, I mean, literally, they came here.
Yeah.
They flew their private jet to Oakland.
Yeah.
Got a rental car, drove to the neighborhood that we're in right here, which is not a nice neighborhood.
Yeah.
Right? And literally, we're like, hey, Mitch, you want us to move our car out so you can put your car in? And he's like, no, this is a rental. If they steal this, that's okay, but don't let them steal your car, right?
Yeah.
Like, that was his thought process. He's like, they can steal this rental, but no, keep your car in the gate. And so he comes in here, and literally we put this presentation together for him on what we're going to do when we launch in Whole Foods. And he agrees to invest, and he puts up the money for us to launch in Whole Foods. And so when we're getting ready for this launch, right, we get everything needed to go into 500 stores as we're growing the fresh truffle business.
Yeah.
And as we all know now, at some point, COVID hit, right? And when I say COVID hit, I'm really talking about the day that the shelter-in-place, when everyone started getting the shelter-in-place alerts on their phone.
Was it March 13th?
Yeah.
Something like that.
And
Friday
the
the
first one
13th.
was Santa Clara County, which is right here.
Yeah.
And I did not even know that was a thing.
Yeah.
I maybe I should have. I don't know. I literally didn't know shelter in place was. I did not know you could just make people stay home.
Well, I had no idea either. I mean, up until this time, when have we ever experienced that?
Right.
Ever.
And I mean, it's such a nice name too. Shelter in place.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, seems like a vacation.
They don't call it lockdown because that's what it is.
Yeah. Like a spa or something to go to.
People would have started rioting a lot faster if they called it lockdown.
Yeah, for sure.
And so when that happens, then all the restaurants shut down.
Yeah.
Whole Foods pauses the rollout. And me and Tyler had to do this little calculation that we always do. Basically, to figure out our working capital. And you your accounts receivable plus all the cash in the bank minus what you owe in either accounts payable or the credit card.
Yeah.
And then that will either give you a negative or a positive number. And if it gives you a negative number, then you need to figure out how to sell whatever you have lying around to make that number positive. Or if it is positive, then you're good, right? And when we did that calculation, we were negative $60,000.
Oh my god!
And that was including accounts receivable.
Yeah.
Right now, no restaurant is about to pay us.
Hell no.
So you take accounts receivable out of the equation, and we're just not in a good place.
The juice, yeah.
And we look at this, and the next day I get a phone call from Leah, and she's now in charge of all of our private events, right?
Okay.
Literally, she's done over $2 million in sales in private events.
Whoa.
Right? And she calls and says that her husband, who runs two incredible restaurants, and she's told me that I can share this, that he just got laid off and they cut his salary.
Yeah.
And so she asked me, she's like, I just need to know, am I going to get furloughed?
Yeah.
And I was like, Leah, we will make a commitment to not furlough anybody. And we had some contract workers with us.
Yeah.
But then Whole Foods paused all the demos, so we couldn't even. There's no way we could even keep them working, right?
Yeah.
And so we made a commitment to not furlough any of our employees, any of the team members, right? And so here we are, negative.
Yeah.
And then there's no viable sales options. Restaurants aren't buying truffles, and even if they think they are, they don't have the money to pay for them.
Exactly.
And then Whole Foods, and then even if Whole Foods were to take on all that product, the sales projections, people are killing each other for toilet paper. You know, who
They're
is
going to
worried
be buying
about
truffle salt. Yeah.
Exactly. And so here we are as a business, and for about 3 days, honestly, I kept replaying the scene in Blow, and when I say replay, I mean constantly, going back to how you talk to yourself, right?
Yeah.
I kept replaying the scene of the kid at the dinner table and his parents arguing about money, right?
Yeah.
And then him working so hard, right, to fix that wrong in his life.
Yeah.
And then getting to a point where that movie ends with him arguing with his wife about money while their kid is at the dinner table.
Yeah.
And I kept playing this amnesia scene in my head, and I felt like my dad. I felt like I had grown this business. I was a little too far on the edge, and then we got hit with something, just like when 2008 hit. We got hit with this pandemic, and I thought I was going to lose this business. And so I 100% was angry and terrified. And we had a couple days in there, and then Mitch comes back out, and we do a presentation for Mitch, right, on what we did with Whole Foods, right?
Yeah.
And we had done every single thing that we said we would do. We hit these sales numbers, we put these teams in place, we launched these products, we got this organized, and Mitch literally looked at me and he said, well, what are we doing here? And I was like, what do you mean? He's like, are you raising money or not? And I was like, Mitch, if you're interested in putting more money in this company, we are raising money.
Yeah.
And he says, okay, how much of this company will I own if I put in another $100,000 today? And we're sitting right here, and it's me, Tyler's stepdad, Bob, was our legal counsel, Mitch, Alice, and then Sarah and Ian, right? And you could just feel the animosity in the air.
Yeah.
And we write it out on paper, and we're like, you'll own, came out to 13%. And at this stage, a lot of people I honestly think a lot of people I think a lot of people don't understand equity enough to understand the value of partners.
Yeah.
And Mitch is a guy who I will always take as a partner in my business.
Yeah.
And It's 13%, and I had heard Mitch a time before say that he likes to have 15% in companies. And so, in that moment, I was like, Mitch, another $100,000 will get you this much. Would you like to own 15% of Truffle Shuffle? And he says, yes, I would. How much do I have to write? Tell me how much I have to write on a check to own 15% of Truffle Shuffle today.
Yeah.
Because in this moment, I'm doing this calculation. All right, if we're $60,000 in the hole, we have 6 people on the team. $60,000 is going to get us, 2.5 months. We're in a pandemic. We're still going to be in the same exact position in 2.5 months.
Yeah.
And so I was like, we need just a little bit more money because you need some money to figure something out.
Yeah.
Right. And so it came out to $137,000. And he wrote us a check for $137,000 the day the stock market crashed in the middle of a pandemic for a business that was 80% to restaurants when every single restaurant in America was closed.
Whoa.
And that is belief.
Yeah. That is hope. That is, yeah.
And after that moment, we made a decision. I don't know what you want to call it. Not to get like religious or anything, but like a commitment, right? To one day write Mitch a check back. That there would be no way that we would ever lose his money. Now we will figure out a way to make sure we write him a check back. And the next day, we get a phone call from the Battery asking if we want to do a virtual cooking class for their top members. And that was a phone call that completely changed it for our business.
Yeah.
And so
I remember you guys were like, hey, we're doing this video. You want to come do an intro?
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, I'll come do an intro. It's a pandemic, baby. Ain't nobody working. I'm fine.
we had what did you call yourself at that time?
I think I was just rolling with Sucio at that time.
I think it was either Sucio or David Sucio.
Yeah, something like that. But I remember you guys were like, it was a whole setup, man. It was the whole production. I remember we're like, okay, we got to do this, we got to do that. And then I remember also that I had no idea what it was for. You guys were like, hey, just make this. We're doing this video. I said, all right, cool, let's do this video. I don't even know what it's for. But that ended up being the beginning of something great.
Yeah.
Of something that has turned, how many months is it now? 10, 11? No,
this
since March.
week will be our 40th Sunday class.
40th Sunday class.
But in total, we've done about 350 cooking classes.
Yeah.
In the past 9 months.
Yeah. And, since then, I've watched your business grow. You've outgrown this space into the loading dock place you were at for a little while. And then now you own a straight noodle house.
Yeah.
Well, it used to be a noodle house. It's
yeah.
a big-ass factory. I couldn't be more proud of you, man, and Tyler. So you're doing these videos. We're doing these videos. I come in sometimes. You're doing them. And you're great behind the camera, man. You got presence. And Tyler, I think, also found some presence, even though he's a little shy, but he does awesome. What was the growth of that program? Like, how did you see, like, you do this class for the Battery, and then after that, what happens in your brain, and what's, like, the next steps?
So, it kind of goes back to, like, the promises you make to yourself, So,
yeah.
like, when we first started this business, our goal was to make it worth $10 million by the end of 2020.
Yeah.
Right? And I have to say, just watching my dad build a business, like, I like business, and every time I would run the scenarios through my head with the products and the fresh truffles, I felt one day we could get to $10 million total revenue, right? And so $10 million for most companies in this area in Silicon Valley is nothing, right? It's an unbelievable amount of money to chefs. To these guys, it's nothing. And so it's never a business that anyone's going to try to acquire. And so the reason I'm saying that is because when we did that first cooking class, right, kind of two things happened. One was we did that, we were just going for it, right? And when that thing first hit the website, we completely sold out of truffles, completely sold out of the experience. We really had no idea what was going to happen. We didn't prep anything. Like, that's how much we literally didn't want to spend the money to prep anything because we didn't know if we would sell anything.
Yeah.
And so, and as you remember, when we did that first class, it was on Facebook Live, so you couldn't see people cooking.
Yeah.
But then we got to the end of it, and all these people started tagging us. And we're getting hundreds of tags in. By the end of that day, over 1,000 people had watched that video.
Yeah.
And when we saw people tagging the dishes that they cooked at home, Michelin quality truffle risotto with fresh truffles on it, seeing how happy it made people, right? And then also seeing, it was the first time where I thought about the business, and I was like, I actually have no idea what the potential could be here. Because everybody eats food on planet Earth.
Yeah.
Everybody wants to learn how to cook better, and everybody wants to be able to eat better food. And what happened as we kept growing this thing is that we built this community of people, and our kind of motto now is cook together. And so, every Sunday, hundreds of people join us from their own homes to cook along with us step by step. And through this, very isolating time in history, it has felt unbelievably joyous to Truffle Shuffle because of all the people that we get to cook with every week. I've actually got complaints from people that join the classes angry with me because they think I've sold them an experience with all of my friends and family. And I'm like, there's hundreds of people on this, and I've never met a single person.
Yeah.
But it has become such a community that more than just one person has literally complained and been like, everyone on here is just clearly friends with the chef.
Yeah.
I don't understand why you guys are selling tickets to something like this.
Yeah.
And that's how incredible of a community. When we explain that, you see people like their jaws drop. You know?
I don't know anybody. They're like, what?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I was here a couple weeks ago when you guys did the salmon Benedict, the smoked salmon Benedict.
Mm-hmm.
And, from where you guys have grown to now, you guys had a musical guest. You had special guest Travis from Aloha.
Mm-hmm.
Come talk about the fish and the product. And that it's remarkable, to see how much growth you've had in 8 months is crazy. And, where are you going from here? Where are we taking this? Where's it going?
So, honestly, the goal, the growth has been incredible. And the goal now is to figure out how to get as many people as possible to cook together. And to use Truffle Shuffle as a platform to help chefs. And so the way that I see this is if we could build out a platform very similar to Audible.
Yeah.
Right? So you're a chef, you spend your entire life cooking, you have a skill set developed,
Yeah.
That's truly like an asset. It's an asset that you can utilize, right? And so the difference between an asset and a skill set is an asset is something that you utilize to monetize, right?
Yeah.
And so you take that asset and imagine if you could log onto this platform and record videos of you showing people how to make your favorite dishes, right? And then it goes out there, and very similar to audiobooks, right? People could buy video classes or cooking classes at a time. Some are recorded, some are live, and then it stores in their bank of library of their favorite cooking experiences.
Yeah.
And so looking at it with something like that, but ultimately just really focusing on the experience and helping people cook together. And I think what we do here and the reason why it has been so successful so quickly is because we're truly trying to figure out how to help people cook as best as possible.
Yeah.
When you look at a lot of Food Network recipes, everything's kind of dumbed down, right?
Yeah.
And it was dumbed down for, before COVID, nobody could find time on their Google Calendar to cook dinner.
Yeah.
Right? You know? So it was dumbed down, you know, the 30-minute meals, everything like that. And what we're trying to focus on here is cooking those dishes that when you eat it, it transports you, you know?
Yeah.
The same dishes you would go out and eat at a Michelin star restaurant. And so really focusing on that and figuring out a way to bring this to the people, bring it to anyone that is looking for it. And then really looking at experiences. We have a couple of really cool things lined up. We're doing a truffle risotto class, and then afterwards we're literally partnering with an entire symphony. So you'll do the truffle risotto class, and then we're going to figure out how to live stream an entire symphony.
That's awesome.
You're eating the risotto, and you know we do this like joke where we play a symphony, and so literally I figured out how to get a hold of
a straight symphony.
And so that will be something people do after the risotto class. And then for New Year's Eve, we're looking to partner with SF Speakeasy on doing like the 100-year anniversary of the Speakeasy.
Whoa.
So 2021,
so cool.
And do it virtual. So if you could imagine people, thousands of people, you know, at home in Speakeasy attire like the 1920s, you know, and we do it virtual. And so we'll send them, the difference in what we do is we make it interactive by sending them part of the experience.
Yeah.
When you just log on, it's just TV. But when you send people part of the experience, and so we'll send them a charcuterie board with caviar and everything like that. And then we're still organizing the details, but we're going to send people like, you know, glitter and sparklers and streamers and things for them to celebrate the ball dropping at home.
Yeah.
And then first we'll set up the charcuterie board with them.
Yeah.
Show them how to eat the caviar, and then hand it over to the guys at SF Speakeasy, and they're going to literally do a 1920 style New Year's Eve show for them.
That's so cool, man. Hell yeah. So I want to thank you for doing this with me. And I want to thank you for donating meals to the first responders. You know, during this pandemic, you guys were on top of growing this new, you know, business pivot. You also made time to do that. So that's something that's very commendable of this Truffle Shuffle, and I'm proud to be now officially sponsored by Truffle Shuffle. All right. So, Jason, once again, thank you very much. I'm sure I'll have you on here soon. We're actually going to do a duo podcast with you and Tyler on here.
Nice.
Talk about some upcoming things. But for all you out there, thank you for listening. You can find Jason McKinney at
TruffleShuffleSF.com.
Boom. Instagram
is at TruffleShuffle_SF.
Bam. There you go. Show some love. They're live every Sunday with their classes on Instagram Live and Facebook Live, I think, right? So they're everywhere. Check them out. Jason, thank you very much. This is Sucio Talk signing out. I hope y'all enjoyed it. 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 Hope y'all